The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and dreamed of what waited beyond. When the Valorian Empire finally made contact with Earth, it seemed like those dreams had come true. The aliens came with gifts of technology, promises of friendship, and offers to join their great galactic family. What they did not mention was the price humanity would have to pay. Admiral Daniel Harris remembered that day clearly, even though 30 years had passed. He was a young captain then, full of hope and excitement about humanity's future among the stars. He watched the world leaders shake hands with the Valorian ambassadors. He cheered when they announced that humans would join the Empire. He did not understand what they had given away until it was too late. The Treaty of Submission seemed reasonable at first. Humanity would receive faster-than-light technology, access to galactic trade routes, and protection from hostile species. In exchange, humans agreed to follow imperial law and accept their place in the galactic order. The final condition was simple but absolute. Humans were forbidden from building warships of any kind. Not a single cannon, not a single fighter craft, not a single armed vessel. The Valorians explained that this was for everyone's safety. Young species could not be trusted with weapons. They might hurt themselves or others. It was better this way. Daniel Harris spent the next 3 decades watching humanity become slaves in everything but name. Human cargo ships carried goods across the galaxy, but they carried no weapons to defend themselves. Human engineers built magnificent vessels for other species, but they could not build ships for their own people. Human colonies spread across dozens of worlds, but they had no protection except what the Empire chose to provide. The Empire rarely chose to provide anything. When pirates attacked human freighters, the Valorians sent investigators who wrote reports and did nothing else. When hostile species raided human outposts, the Empire called these incidents unfortunate but unavoidable. When entire colonies sent desperate calls for help, the response was always the same. The Empire would look into the matter. The Empire was concerned. The Empire offered thoughts and prayers. Admiral Harris rose through the ranks of Earth's civilian fleet administration. He commanded cargo convoys and transport ships. He trained pilots who would never fly combat missions. He grew old watching humanity suffer, and something inside him turned cold and hard like iron. The breaking point came on a spring morning when the colony of New Montana sent its final transmission. New Montana was a farming world on the edge of human space. 40,000 people lived there, growing food for other colonies and raising families under an orange sun. They were simple people who wanted simple lives. They had done nothing to deserve what happened to them. The Keth were a warrior species known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. They raided weaker worlds for resources, slaves, and sport. When their fleet appeared in New Montana's sky, the colonists sent desperate messages to Earth and to the Empire. They begged for help. They pleaded for someone to save their children. No help came. The Keth burned New Montana to ashes. They killed everyone they could find and took everything worth taking. When they left, nothing remained but smoke and silence, and the bodies of 40,000 innocent people. Admiral Harris received the news in his office on Earth. He sat alone for a long time, staring at the reports and the images and the lists of the dead. Then he did something he had not done since he was a young man. He wept. Katie Morrison arrived on Earth 3 weeks after the attack. She was 26 years old, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had been off-world when the Keth came, running supplies to a nearby station. She came home to find her parents, her brothers, her friends, and everyone she had ever loved, reduced to ashes. She requested a meeting with the World Council and stood before the assembled leaders of humanity with nothing but her voice and her grief. "I watched the recordings," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook at her sides. "I saw my mother running with my baby brother in her arms. I saw a Keth warrior cut them down like they were nothing. I saw my father try to fight back with a farming tool because he had nothing else." The council members sat in uncomfortable silence. Some looked away. Others stared at their screens and pretended to read important documents. "The Empire told us we would be protected," Katie continued. "They said we did not need weapons because they would keep us safe. They lied. They have always lied, and we believed them because we wanted to believe that someone stronger would take care of us. She stepped closer to the central podium and looked directly at the council chairman. 40,000 people are dead because we trusted aliens who see us as nothing more than useful servants. How many more will die before we understand the truth? The Empire will never protect us. No one will protect us. If we want to survive in this galaxy, we have to protect ourselves. The chairman cleared his throat nervously. Miss Morrison, we understand your pain, but the treaty is clear. We cannot build warships. If we violate the agreement, the Empire will destroy us. The Empire is already letting others destroy us, Katie replied. At least if we fight back, we die on our feet instead of on our knees. She turned and walked out of the chamber without waiting for a response. That night, Admiral Harris invited Katie Morrison to his home. They sat on his porch and looked up at the stars that had once filled humanity with wonder and now filled them with dread. The Council will do nothing, Harris said quietly. They are too afraid. Then we are doomed, Katie replied. The old admiral smiled, and there was something dangerous in his eyes. No, Miss Morrison. We are not doomed. The Council may be afraid, but not everyone has given up hope. For 15 years, I have been working on something. A secret that could change everything. Katie looked at him with confusion and the smallest spark of hope. Would you like to see what humanity has been building in the darkness? Harris asked. Katie nodded, and her journey toward vengeance and salvation began. The transport ship traveled for 9 days through empty space before reaching its destination. Katie Morrison spent most of that time staring out the small window of her cabin, watching the stars drift past and wondering what Admiral Harris had meant by his mysterious words. She had learned patience during her years as a cargo pilot, but this journey tested her limits. On the 10th day, the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Katie saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. The Erebus 7 system was officially listed as a dead zone in Imperial records. The star was too dim, the planets too barren, and the asteroid field too dangerous for any practical use. No one came here because there was nothing worth finding. That was exactly what Admiral Harris had been counting on. Hidden among the tumbling rocks and ancient debris floated the greatest secret in human history. Massive construction platforms stretched between the asteroids, connected by tubes and walkways that sparkled with lights. Thousands of workers moved through the structures like ants in a vast metal hive, and floating in the darkness, arranged in perfect rows, were ships unlike anything Katie had ever seen. Warships. Human warships. Welcome to the Erebus shipyard, Admiral Harris said through the communication system. This is what humanity has been building for 15 years. Katie counted the vessels as the transport moved closer. Battleships the size of small cities. Sleek destroyers bristling with weapons. Carriers that housed hundreds of fighter craft in their bellies. 47 warships in total, painted in dark colors that seemed to drink in the light. How is this possible? Katie whispered. Commander Ryan Cole met her at the docking bay. He was a tall man in his 40s, with gray at his temples and calluses on his hands from years of hard work. His uniform was simple and bore no imperial markings, only the blue and white flag of Earth. Everything here was built from scratch, Cole explained as he led Katie through the station. No imperial technology, no alien designs, just human minds and human hands. They walked past workshops where engineers assembled weapons systems. They passed training rooms where pilots practiced combat maneuvers in simulators. They watched crews drilling emergency procedures on mock ship bridges. Everywhere Katie looked, she saw humans working with purpose and determination. The Empire monitors all technology transfers, Cole continued. They track every piece of equipment that goes to human colonies. But they never thought to watch what we invented ourselves. They assumed we were too primitive to create anything dangerous. He smiled grimly. They were wrong. Lieutenant Megan Torres was the chief weapons officer for the flagship, a massive battleship named the USS Defiance. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid and eyes that burned with fierce intelligence. When Katie met her in the weapons testing chamber, Torres was examining a cannon barrel that glowed with strange energy. This is our main weapon, Torres explained, patting the barrel like it was a beloved pet. We call it the gravity pulse cannon. It creates a focused gravitational wave that can tear apart enemy ships at distances the Empire considers impossible. Katie stared at the weapon with amazement. "How did you develop this?" "We studied everything the Empire gave us," Torres replied. "We learned their physics, their engineering, their limitations. Then we found the gaps in their knowledge and filled them with our own ideas. The Valorians are powerful, but they stopped innovating thousands of years ago. They assume their technology is the best because no one has challenged them. We are going to prove them wrong." Admiral Harris arrived later that day to give Katie a full tour of the Defiance. The ship was a monster of metal and fire, over 2 kilometers long and carrying enough weapons to level a small moon. Its corridors hummed with power, and its crew moved with the quiet confidence of people who believed in their mission. "I started this project after the Kepler Station massacre," Harris said as they walked through the ship's command center. 60 colonists killed by raiders while the Empire did nothing. I realized then that humanity would never be safe as long as we depended on others for protection. He touched the main control panel with something like reverence. "I recruited engineers who wanted to fight back. I found pilots who were tired of running. I convinced officers who still believed in humanity's future. We built this fleet in secret, piece by piece, year by year." "And the Empire never found out?" Katie asked. "We were careful. Every worker here officially has a job somewhere else. Every piece of material was secretly diverted from civilian projects. Every ship was assembled in darkness and hidden among the asteroids." Harris looked at her with those dangerous eyes. "The Empire thinks humans are helpless. They have no idea what we have created." Katie spent the following weeks training with the fleet. She flew simulator missions until her hands knew the controls by instinct. She studied tactics and strategies developed specifically to counter Imperial technology. She met the other pilots, engineers, and officers who had dedicated their lives to this secret cause. She found something she had lost on New Montana. She found hope. The attack came without warning on a quiet morning. A distress signal from Proxima Reach, a human mining station on the edge of known space. Keth raiders had appeared in the system, the same species that had destroyed New Montana, and they were preparing to attack. Admiral Harris gathered his senior officers in the command center of the Defiance. The holographic display showed the mining station surrounded by enemy ships. Thousands of human workers were trapped there with no way to escape. "This is the moment we have been waiting for," Harris said. His voice was calm, but his eyes blazed with cold fire. "The Empire will not save those people. The Keth will kill them all, unless someone stops them. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity can do." He turned to Commander Cole. "Prepare the fleet for combat jump." He turned to Lieutenant Torres. "Bring all weapon systems online." He turned to Katie Morrison. "Lead the fighter squadrons. Show them what happens when they murder our people." Katie felt her heart pounding in her chest. 15 years of preparation had led to this moment. 47 warships powered up their engines and prepared to jump into battle. Thousands of men and women stood ready to fight and die for humanity's freedom. "All ships, this is Admiral Harris," the old man spoke into the fleet-wide communication channel. "Today we break our chains. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not kneel. Today we take our first step toward freedom. All ships, prepare to jump. May God watch over us all." The fleet vanished into the light of faster-than-light travel, racing toward destiny. The Keth warfleet surrounded Proxima Reach like wolves circling wounded prey. 23 raider vessels hung in the darkness, their weapons charged, and their crews eager for blood. Below them, the human mining station trembled with fear, as 8,000 workers huddled in shelters and prayed for salvation that would never come. Commander Vrakthos stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the pathetic cargo ships fleeing toward the planet's surface. He bared his fangs in what passed for a smile among his species. Humans were his favorite targets. They were soft and weak, and they screamed beautifully when they died. The Empire had made them defenseless, and that made them perfect victims. "Signal the fleet," Vrakthos ordered. "Begin the attack. Leave no survivors." The Keth ships powered up their plasma cannons, and prepared to rain fire on the station below. In minutes, 8,000 humans would be dead, and the Keth would strip the mining operation of everything valuable. It would be easy. It was always easy with humans. Then the sky split open with light. 47 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, appearing so suddenly that the Keth sensors screamed with alerts. The vessels were unlike anything Vrakthos had ever seen. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in weapon ports and armor plating that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with a precision that spoke of countless hours of drilling and training. At the center of the formation floated the largest ship of all. Its name was painted on the hull in letters that could be read from across the void. USS Defiance. Every communication channel in the system crackled with a human voice. "This is Admiral Daniel Harris of the Earth Defense Fleet." The old man spoke calmly, as if he were ordering dinner rather than facing down a hostile war fleet. "You have attacked human citizens under my protection. You have murdered our people on New Montana and countless other worlds. You have mistaken our patience for weakness and our peace for surrender." Commander Vrakthos stared at his display in shock. Human warships? That was impossible. The treaty forbade it. Humans did not have warships. Humans could not have warships. "You have exactly 60 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender," Harris continued. "There will be no second warning." The Keth commander recovered from his surprise and felt rage replace his confusion. These humans thought they could threaten him? With their crude ships and their empty words, he would show them the cost of such foolishness. "All ships, open fire on the human vessels," Vrakthos screamed. "Destroy them all." The Keth fleet unleashed a barrage of plasma fire that lit up the darkness like a storm of deadly stars. The bolts streaked toward the human formation, enough firepower to melt through any civilian vessel in seconds. The plasma splashed harmlessly against the human shields. Lieutenant Megan Torres watched her tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Keth weapons were powerful, but the human shields had been designed specifically to counter plasma technology. Years of studying imperial physics had revealed weaknesses that the aliens themselves had forgotten. The human fleet could withstand far more punishment than the enemy expected. "Admiral," Torres reported, "enemy fire is having minimal effect. Our shields are holding at 94%. Harris nodded. "Commander Cole, give the order." Ryan Cole leaned forward in his command chair and spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. "All ships, return fire. Show them what humans can do." The gravity pulse cannons activated with a sound like thunder rolling through space. Invisible waves of focused gravitational force erupted from the human warships, crossing the void faster than the eye could follow. They struck the Keth vessels with devastating effect. Commander Vrakthos watched in horror as the ship beside his flagship crumpled like paper being crushed in a fist. The gravity pulse had created a localized distortion that tore the vessel apart from the inside. Metal screamed, reactors exploded, and 300 Keth warriors died in an instant. "What is happening?" Vrakthos shouted. "What weapons are they using?" No one had an answer. Katie Morrison led the human fighter squadrons out of the carriers and into the chaos of battle. She flew a sleek interceptor designed for speed and maneuverability, with twin gravity pulse cannons mounted on each wing. Behind her, 200 pilots followed in tight formation. "All fighters, this is Morrison," she spoke through the squadron channel. "Pick your targets and stay with your wingmen. These are the same animals who killed our families on New Montana. Today we give them the justice they deserve." The fighters swept through the Keth fleet like angry hornets. They dodged enemy fire with impossible grace and returned the favor with deadly precision. Every pulse from their weapons found its mark. Every shot counted. Katie spotted a Keth destroyer trying to flee toward the edge of the system. She recognized the markings on its hull. It was the same class of ship that had led the attack on New Montana. She pushed her throttle forward and gave chase. The destroyer's pilot was good, but Katie was better. She had spent weeks in simulators preparing for this moment. She had memorized every weakness in Keth ship design. She had practiced these maneuvers until they were burned into her muscles. She lined up her shot and fired. The gravity pulses struck the destroyer's engine section and tore it apart. The ship spun wildly, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. Katie watched it die and felt something release in her chest. Not happiness, not satisfaction, just the quiet relief of finally being able to fight back. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, all 23 Keth vessels were destroyed or disabled. Human casualties were minimal. The mining station was safe. 8,000 workers emerged from their shelters and stared at the sky in disbelief. Admiral Harris broadcast a message on all frequencies, knowing that every sensor in the sector would pick it up and relay it across the galaxy. To all who are listening, this is Admiral Daniel Harris of Earth. Humanity is no longer defenseless. We have built a fleet in secret, and we will use it to protect our people. Any species that attacks human citizens will face the same fate as the Keth you see floating in ruin around this station. We did not want this war, but we will finish it. He paused and let his words sink in. The rules have changed. Humanity has claws now, and we are not afraid to use them. Across the galaxy, countless species heard his message. The weak and the oppressed felt something stir in their hearts. The powerful and the cruel felt something cold run down their spines. The humans had revealed their secret. Nothing would ever be the same again. The holographic display showed the Battle of Proxima Reach in perfect detail. High Arbiter Voss's Wren watched it for the 7th time, his pale eyes tracking every movement of the human warships. He watched the gravity pulse cannons tear through Keth vessels like claws through flesh. He watched the human fighters swarm with terrifying coordination. He watched 23 ships die in 11 minutes. The leader of the Valorian Empire felt something his species rarely experienced. He felt afraid. For 10,000 years, the Valorians had ruled the galaxy through careful control and absolute power. They allowed weaker species to join their empire. But they never let those species become threats. The Treaty of Submission was the foundation of their control. No subject race could build warships. No subject race could challenge Valorian dominance. The system had worked perfectly for 100 generations, until now. The humans had broken the treaty. They had built a fleet in secret. They had developed weapons that could challenge Imperial technology. This was not just a violation of law. This was an attack on everything the Empire represented. Vossren summoned his war council to the throne room of the Imperial Palace. A dozen senior commanders gathered around the great table, each representing fleets and armies that had conquered thousands of worlds. They looked to their leader for guidance, but Vossren saw doubt in their eyes. "The humans must be punished," declared Admiral Kesisvor, commander of the northern fleets. "We should send a strike force to Earth and demand their unconditional surrender. If they refuse, we burn their homeworld to ashes." "And what of their fleet?" asked General Thasmel. "The Keth were not weak, yet the humans destroyed them with ease. We cannot assume a simple strike force will succeed." "Then we send the Grand Fleet," Kesvor replied. 3,000 warships. Enough power to darken the stars. Let the humans see what true strength looks like. Voss's Wren raised a hand for silence. The commanders fell quiet immediately. "We will send the Grand Fleet," the High Arbiter said slowly. "Not to destroy Earth, but to force their surrender. The humans are clever, but they are not fools. When they see the full might of the Empire arrayed against them, they will submit. They must submit." He turned to face his commanders with cold determination. "Prepare the fleet. We leave in 3 cycles." News of the Imperial response spread across the galaxy within hours. 3,000 Valorian warships, the largest armada assembled in 500 years, was sailing toward Earth. Every species in the Empire held their breath and waited to see what would happen when the unstoppable force met the humans who refused to move. Admiral Harris received the intelligence reports on the bridge of the Defiance. He studied the numbers with a calm expression that hid the turmoil in his heart. 3,000 ships. The Empire was not taking any chances. "We knew this was coming," Commander Cole said quietly. "The question is whether we can survive it." Harris turned to Lieutenant Torres. "Status of the second wave shipyards?" Torres pulled up a display showing human space. Scattered across a dozen hidden locations, construction platforms worked at maximum speed. Shipyard workers had been laboring without rest since the Battle of Proxima Reach. building new vessels to join the fleet. 163 additional warships are ready for deployment, Torres reported. Another 40 will be completed within the week. Total fleet strength: 210 combat vessels. Cole shook his head. That is still less than a tenth of the Imperial Armada. Numbers are not everything, Harris replied. The Valorians have not fought a real war in centuries. Their crews are trained for intimidation, not combat. Our people have been preparing for this moment their entire lives. He stood and walked to the main display, which showed Earth floating peacefully in its ancient orbit. 2 billion people lived on that small blue world. They were depending on him to protect them. Katie, Harris called out. Katie Morrison stepped forward from her position near the tactical station. In the weeks since Proxima Reach, she had become one of the fleet's most respected officers. Her skill in battle and her personal losses had earned her the trust of everyone who served with her. We need to prepare our people for what is coming, Harris said. Not just the military. Everyone. The civilians on Earth. The colonists across human space. Every man and woman and child who will be watching when the Empire arrives. Katie nodded. What do you want me to tell them? The truth. That we are outnumbered. That the fight will be hard. That many of us may not survive. Harris paused and looked at the image of Earth. But also tell them that we will not surrender. Tell them that humanity has finally found its courage. Tell them that whatever happens, we will face it together. 2000. The Grand Fleet arrived in Earth's solar system 3 weeks later. 3,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in formations that stretched across millions of kilometers. They were beautiful and terrible, like a storm of steel and fire that could swallow worlds. High Arbiter Voss's stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and looked at the human fleet waiting for him near Earth. 200 ships against 3,000. The humans had to know they could not win. He opened a communication channel. People of Earth. This is High Arbiter Vossren of the Valorian Empire. You have violated the sacred treaty. You have built weapons of war without permission. You have committed crimes against galactic law. His voice was cold and absolute. You have one chance to survive. Surrender your fleet. Disarm your weapons. Accept Imperial judgment. If you refuse, we will destroy every ship, every station, and every colony you possess. Earth itself will burn. This is your only warning. The response came immediately. Admiral Harris appeared on the display, his old face set with iron determination. High Arbiter, I have a counteroffer. Turn your ships around and leave our space. Recognize humanity as a free and sovereign species. End the Treaty of Submission. And treat us as equals. Voss's felt his anger rise. You are in no position to make demands, human. Perhaps not, Harris replied. But we are in a position to fight. You taught us that the galaxy respects only strength, so here is ours. Attack us if you wish. But know this. We will make you pay for every inch. We will make the cost so high that your empire will never forget it. And when other species see what humans can do against impossible odds, they will ask themselves a question. If the humans can stand up to the Empire, why can we not do the same? The standoff had begun. 2 fleets faced each other across the darkness. Neither side moved. Neither side blinked. And across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and waited to see who would break first. The standoff lasted 3 days. 200 human warships faced 3,000 Imperial vessels across the darkness of space. Neither side fired. Neither side retreated. The tension was a living thing that pressed against every soul in both fleets. Admiral Harris spent those days on the bridge of the Defiance, sleeping in short bursts and eating only when his officers forced food into his hands. He studied the enemy formation constantly, looking for weaknesses and calculating possibilities. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Even with superior weapons and training, the human fleet could not defeat the entire Imperial Armada. They could hurt it badly, perhaps destroy a third or even half of the enemy ships, but in the end, the Empire would win through sheer numbers. Harris was prepared to fight anyway. He was prepared to die. But he was not prepared to surrender. On the morning of the fourth day, something unexpected happened. Lieutenant Torres looked up from her communication station with confusion on her face. "Admiral, we are receiving transmissions from across the Empire. Dozens of them. Hundreds." She put the signals on the main display, and the bridge crew watched in stunned silence. The Rathani, a species of miners who had served the Empire for 3,000 years, had seized control of their home system. They had captured the Imperial garrison and declared their independence. The Vasaskai, once proud warriors who had been disarmed and subjugated like humanity, had risen against their overseers. Fighting had broken out on 17 of their colonies. The Melaran, the Kethavi, the Thressen, and a dozen other species were broadcasting messages of defiance. They had watched the humans stand up to the Empire. They had seen a small fleet refuse to kneel before an armada that could destroy worlds, and something had awakened inside them. Hope, courage, the realization that they did not have to accept their chains. Commander Cole stared at the display with wide eyes. "They are rebelling. All of them. The whole Empire is falling apart." Katie Morrison stepped forward, her heart pounding. "They saw us fight. They saw us refuse to surrender. And they decided that if we could do it, so could they." On the Eternal Dominion, High Arbiter Vossren received the same reports with growing horror. His communication officers could barely keep up with the flood of emergency messages. Rebellions on 17 worlds, military installations captured, Imperial governors arrested or killed. The flames were spreading faster than anyone could contain them. Admiral Kesses Vor burst onto the bridge with panic in his eyes. "High Arbiter, we must return immediately. The northern territories are in chaos. If we do not act now, we could lose half the Empire." Vossren stood frozen before the display. He had led the greatest armada in galactic history to crush a small group of rebellious humans. Instead, he had created a symbol that was tearing his empire apart. Every moment he spent here, staring at the human fleet, more systems slipped from his grasp. He faced a terrible choice. He could destroy Earth and avenge Imperial honor. But by the time he was finished, there might be no empire left to lead. Or he could retreat and try to save what remained of Valorian power. For the first time in his long life, Vossren chose survival over pride. The negotiations took place on a neutral station in the outer systems. Admiral Harris represented humanity. High Arbiter Vossren represented what remained of the Empire. Dozens of other species sent observers, their eyes hungry for every word that was spoken. The Treaty of Earth was signed 6 months after the standoff. Humanity was recognized as a sovereign power with full rights to maintain their own military. The old restrictions were abolished forever. More importantly, the treaty established something entirely new: the Galactic Coalition. The coalition was not an empire. It had no single ruler, no supreme arbiter, no dominant species. Instead, it was a council where all members had equal voices. Decisions were made through debate and voting, not through force and fear. It was messy and complicated and often frustrating, but it was fair. Katie Morrison became humanity's first ambassador to the coalition. She stood in the great chamber where representatives from hundreds of species gathered and spoke the words that would define the new era. "We did not seek war with the Empire," she said, her voice carrying across the vast hall. "We did not want to fight. We only wanted to live in peace, to raise our families, to explore the stars without fear. But peace cannot exist without justice. And justice cannot exist without the power to defend it." She looked around at the assembled representatives, seeing hope and uncertainty in their strange faces. "The old order is gone. The days of one species ruling all others are over. Now we must build something new together. It will not be easy. We will disagree. We will argue. We will make mistakes. But if we remember that every being in this galaxy deserves freedom and dignity, we can create a future better than anything that came before." The chamber erupted in applause that seemed to shake the station itself. Admiral Harris retired to a small farm in Montana, not far from the site where New Montana's colonists had once dreamed of a similar life. He spent his remaining years teaching his grandchildren about the stars and telling them stories of the fleet that had changed history. When he died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 89, the entire coalition declared a day of mourning. Commander Ryan Cole took over as fleet admiral and oversaw the expansion of Earth's defenses. Under his leadership, humanity built ships not just for war, but for exploration and discovery. Human vessels traveled farther than ever before, finding new worlds and new wonders. Lieutenant Megan Torres became the director of the Coalition's Joint Technology Program, sharing human innovations with other species and learning from their knowledge in return. The gravity pulse cannon was just the beginning. Together, the Coalition developed technologies that none of them could have created alone. And Katie Morrison served as ambassador for 30 years. She watched the Coalition grow and change. She saw former enemies become allies, and former slaves become leaders. She attended the funerals of old friends and the births of new generations. Through it all, she remembered the family she had lost on New Montana and knew that their deaths had not been in vain. On the anniversary of the Battle of Proxima Reach, beings across the galaxy celebrated Revelation Day. They told the story of the small fleet that had defied an empire. They raised glasses to the humans who had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. And in quiet corners of 1,000 worlds, the young and the hopeful repeated the saying that had spread from species to species, from star to star, until it became part of the galaxy's common wisdom. When the humans came, the rules changed forever. It was more than a saying, it was a promise. A reminder that no matter how powerful the oppressor or how hopeless the situation, courage and determination could overcome any odds. Humanity had proven it once, and if the time ever came, they would prove it again.